A mother and daughter returned home to find their husband and father, David Glenn Lewis, missing. Hours later, a deceased hit-and-run victim was found thousands of miles away. It would take 11 years before the victim would be identified as David Glenn Lewis. How did he get there? When David Glenn Lewis' wife and 9-year-old daughter returned home from a weekend shopping trip to Dallas on January 31, 1993 and found David missing with freshly made sandwiches in the fridge. They had no idea that across the country David was hours away from being found as an unidentified John Doe. The man had been seen walking down a Washington highway before being killed in a hit-and-run. Though the hit-and-run victim's identity is now known and his cause of death well established, questions remain surrounding why David Glenn Lewis headed to Washington that weekend. And several other puzzle pieces regarding David's last movements continue to be up in the air. David Glenn Lewis was born in Borger, Texas in 1953, the second of 2 children to Herschel and Esther Lewis. David graduated from high school in 1972 and from there went to Texas Tech University, where he was an honors student and graduated with a degree in political science. David continued on to Texas Tech University Law School, gaining a doctorate in jurisprudence in 1979. David practiced as an attorney in Amarillo, Texas, and was a member of the American Bar Association. He married his wife Karen in 1981 and their only child, a daughter, was born a couple of years later. David was a member of a local church, a Sunday school teacher, a member of the Directors Board for the Dumas Community Education Advisory Council and a district chairman involved in the Boy Scouts of America. David was said to be a dedicated family man and charity volunteer who was close to his parents and brother. Super Bowl weekend of 1993, David's wife and daughter headed from their home in Amarillo to Dallas, around 400 miles away, for a weekend of shopping. They departed Amarillo on the 28th of January, leaving David at home alone for the next couple of days. It is known that David was last seen alive on the 30th of January, but where and by whom has not been revealed. On the 31st of January, the day of the Super Bowl match, David's wife and daughter returned home from Dallas. Expecting to find David waiting for them, they were surprised when the man was nowhere to be found. The tape recorder had been left recording the match, though it had continued to run after the match had finished. 2 freshly made sandwiches were found in the fridge. David's wedding ring and watch had been placed on the kitchen counter. NB1 source claims David's tape recorder had no preset function and so he would have had to manually set it to start recording on the 31st. I can't find another source which confirms this, but something to keep in mind. There were no signs of a struggle or anything disturbed in the house that would point towards burglary or foul play. It appeared as though David had simply slipped out for a while. Due to the match and the tape recording, David's wife believed David may have gone to a friend's house to watch and would return soon. However, a day later, the 1st of February, there is still no sign of David. David's wife goes to the Amarillo Police Department to report her husband missing. 1,600 miles away, a body is found. While David's wife was reporting him missing in Amarillo, at 10:30 p.m. some 1,600 miles away in Yakima County, Washington, several people spotted an individual on Route 24 near Moxie, several miles from Yakima Airport. The exact location is unclear. NB1 source claims the individual was lying down by the road, while another claims he was walking along the center of the road, but either way he was somehow along the road in a precarious manner. Motorists turned around to stop other drivers to warn them of the individual, but when they turned back they found the individual deceased. Police arrived to find the body belonged to a middle-aged man. He had been dressed in military-style clothing and work boots. An examination found no traces of alcohol or drugs in his system, from those that were tested for. Investigators believed him to have been the victim of an accidental hit-and-run. A Chevrolet Camaro was seen leaving the scene around the time of his death. The man had not been carrying any identification when he was killed, and his identity was unknown. The day after John Doe's body was found, the 2nd of February, the investigation into David Glenn Lewis' disappearance in Amarillo heats up when investigators find David's car. The red Ford Explorer had been found outside the Potter County Courts building downtown. Under a mat on the floor, police found David's house and car keys. His checkbook, credit cards, and driving license were inside the car in the usual place David kept them. With the recovery of these items along with David's wedding ring and watch which were found in his home, none of his personal effects were missing. The discovery of David's car and these items have given police no real answers. The investigation does, however, lead police to an interesting piece of information. Some time before his death, David had informed his wife that he believed he had been in danger. He wouldn't, however, tell his wife any information about the threats he believed to be on his life or what the cause of the danger was. David's family believed his disappearance may have been linked to his work as an attorney. A disgruntled client or individual who held David accountable for something that happened as the result of a case and wanted to exact revenge on him. David was due in Dallas a week after his disappearance for a deposition in a conflict of interest case between his former law firm and a wealthy client. David had told his father that he had no intention of covering up any wrongdoings by his former firm and was going to tell the truth, whoever it hurts. These possible leads, however, went nowhere, and it wasn't until later that investigators made their most significant discovery. 2 plane tickets purchased in David's name around the time of his disappearance. The first ticket, purchased on the 31st, was a ticket from Dallas to Amarillo. Interestingly, this is the same journey David's wife and daughter made on the same day. When they returned home to find him missing, how the two got home from Dallas themselves is unclear. The second ticket, purchased a day later on the 1st of February, was a ticket from Los Angeles International Airport to Dallas. This is the day John Doe's body was found in Washington. The intention behind the plane tickets is unknown, and it has not been revealed whether they were used. Did David intend to use them? If so, how did he get from his home in Amarillo to Dallas, a 5-hour car journey away? Did he intend to return home from Washington to Texas before he was killed, using Lax as a stopover? And if that's the case, why did he go to Washington in the first place? With no more leads materializing, the criminal investigation into David's disappearance was closed after 11 months. In 2002, police told local press that the plane tickets purchased in David's name around the time of his disappearance led them to believe David left home of his own accord and they did not suspect foul play in his case. No other leads were forthcoming. In 2003, 10 years after John Doe's body was found in Yakima County, a Washington patrol detective named Pat Ditter read a newspaper series entitled Without a Trace about missing persons cases. Ditter, a stickler for detail and a dedicated detective, read in the series about the flaws in missing persons investigations and particularly flaws in the NCIC's, National Crime Information Center, computer system at the time. Inspired by the thought that possible identities for unidentified victims may have fallen through the cracks of computer databases, Ditter took to Google and inputted characteristics related to about a dozen cases hoping to find missing persons cases that matched their descriptions. Within a week, police finally had a breakthrough. A list of potential victims who roughly matched the description of the Yakima County John Doe. One in particular, a Doe network entry for David Glenn Lewis complete with a picture of the missing man, caught Ditter's eye. The picture of David was strikingly similar to one Ditter had of the John Doe, though he was put off by the lack of glasses on the John Doe's body. After looking into evidence found alongside John Doe's body, Ditter discovered that a pair of glasses had in fact been found. Ditter went to access the personal effects found with John Doe's body and was able to find the glasses, wrapped up in the military-style clothing he had been wearing when he was killed. Now believing the connection between John Doe and David Glenn Lewis may be more than a coincidence, Ditter got into contact with Amarillo police. He later sent them items that could be used for DNA analysis, one of the boots the victim had been wearing, and a tissue sample preserved since 1993. David's mother Esther provided her own DNA sample to test against the unidentified man. In October 2004, 11 years after he went missing, David Glenn Lewis was positively identified as the deceased man found on Route 24, 1,600 miles from home. It is unknown why David would have headed to Washington, and nobody has been able to offer any insight into a connection he may have to the area. Though John Doe has his name back, many questions still circle surrounding what exactly happened to David Glenn Lewis that weekend and how he ended up in Washington. Though police had stated before his body was identified that they believed David went missing of his own accord, David's assertions to his wife that he had been in danger, his demeanor as a loving family man, and the nature of his job as an attorney have David's family convinced that he was the victim of kidnapping or foul play. Ditter believes David's death on the road in Yakima County to have been an accident rather than suicide. Nobody is able to provide any answers as to what would lead David to Washington, a state to which he had no ties. The nature and motivations behind the plane tickets purchased in David's name, too, remain a mystery. Edit: U. Granipandes 75 has found a 1993 article summarizing David's movements before he left Amarillo here. It talks about $5,000 being deposited into David's account on the 30th and possible airport sightings around these few days. Timeline of events: 28th of January 1993. David's wife and daughter head from their home in Amarillo to Dallas for a weekend shopping trip. 30th of January 1993. David is seen alive for the last time before he is seen on the road in Washington. Details of who saw him and where have not been made public. 31st of January 1993, a plane ticket is purchased in David's name from Dallas to Amarillo. Whether this ticket was used, and by who, is unclear. David's wife and daughter return home from Dallas to find David nowhere to be seen. The tape recorder is recording the Super Bowl match, but continued recording after it was over. There are 2 fresh sandwiches in the fridge and David's wedding ring and watch are on the kitchen counter. David's wife assumes David has gone to watch the Super Bowl match with friends. 1st of February 1993, a second plane ticket is purchased in David's name, this one traveling from Los Angeles to Dallas. Again, it is unknown if anyone used this ticket. With no sign of David still, David's wife reports him missing in Amarillo. In Yakima County, Washington, motorists claim to see an individual on Route 24 near Moxie at around 10:30 p.m. They turned around to warn other drivers, but returned to find the man dead. A Chevrolet Camaro was seen leaving the scene. The deceased man, who was found wearing military clothing, was not identified. He was found to not have been intoxicated at his time of death and all drugs that were tested for were not found in his system. 2nd of February 1993, David's car, a Ford Explorer, is found by investigators parked outside the Potter County Courts building in Amarillo. David's personal effects, including his keys, credit cards, and driving license, are inside. 2002, police reveal they believe no foul play to have occurred in David's case and he disappeared voluntarily. 2004, a Washington State Patrol officer is inspired to use Google to check for possible identities for the unidentified man found on the road in 1993. He found a picture of David that bore a striking resemblance to one of the decedent, though David's glasses were missing. After reading that glasses were found at the crime scene, the officer phoned the Amarillo police with a possible identity and sent them DNA samples to check against David Glenn Lewis family members. The body found in 1993 is positively identified as David Glenn Lewis. Questions that remain: why did David leave his home in Texas and travel 1,600 miles to Washington? He had no known ties to the state. Was he running from a perceived threat to his life? Was he meeting someone? Did he simply want to leave his family? Did he ever intend to return? How did David get to Washington in the first place? Were the plane tickets brought in his name connected to his plans? If so, what is the connection to LA? Had he planned to fly home from Washington via there? What is the significance of David's attire of military-style clothing and work boots when he was found dead? What was David referring to when he told his wife that his life had been in danger? Was it connected to his work? Why was David on the road before he was killed? Did he have a breakdown or other mental health issues that had led to his initial decision to leave home? Was it a suicide attempt? Was David's hit and run truly